So what about the transport then of carbon dioxide? Well, it's mostly transported as bicarbonate anions, so 70% of it transported in the plasma as bicarbonate anions, in combination with blood proteins, so nearly a quarter of it, so 23% is transported bound to hemoglobin, but remember it's the globin part of hemoglobin, and approximately 7% dissolves in plasma and is transported that way. Now, just a couple of points here. Hemoglobin that has released its oxygen binds more readily to carbon dioxide than hemoglobin that has oxygen bound to it. So as oxygen gets offloaded from hemoglobin, at the tissue capillaries to enter tissues, carbon dioxide produced by tissue cells enters the red blood cells and binds to hemoglobin. It's so cool. In tissue capillaries as well, carbon dioxide combines with water inside red blood cells to form carbonic acid, which dissociates then to form these bicarbonate anions and hydrogen ions as well. So let's go through this transport of carbon dioxide now. Okay, this top panel here, we're looking at internal respiration, so oxygen release and carbon dioxide pickup at the tissues. Right, we'll start here. We'll get oxygen out of the way. Obviously, oxygen sort of detaches there from hemoglobin, and it is going to be released, from the red blood cells into the plasma, and then it's going to diffuse into the interstitial space and then into the tissue cells. That small amount of oxygen that's dissolved in the blood is also going to diffuse then into the interstitial fluid and into the tissue cells. What we're interested here though, carbon dioxide, it's going to be produced by tissue cells. Okay, some of it will just diffuse into the blood plasma, so that 7% then is going to be transported, dissolved in plasma. Some of it in the plasma will combine with water to form carbonic acid, which then dissociates into the bicarbonate anion and hydrogen ions. That's a slow reaction. However, some carbon dioxide diffuses in red blood cells, and this same reaction occurs in there, but this time it's catalyzed by an enzyme called carbonic anhydrase, so it's really quick. So you're going to get carbon dioxide combining with water to form carbonic acid, which will quickly dissociate to release the bicarbonate anion and also that hydrogen ion. That bicarbonate anion then is going to diffuse out of the red cell into the plasma, and then it's going to be transported to the lungs in that way. And you can't have negative charge leaving a cell without replacing it with something. So chloride anion is going to come in that chloride shift to replace that negatively charged anion leaving. Okay, so what I'm going to do down here, oh yes, we also have some carbon dioxide diffusing in, binding to hemoglobin to form carbaminohemoglobin. Do you remember that? That's what we call hemoglobin with carbon dioxide attached to it. Okay, now if we go down here, everybody, we're talking about external respiration, oxygen pickup and carbon dioxide release in the lungs. So we've had all that blood travel up to the lungs with the carbon dioxide, the 7% of it that's dissolved in plasma just diffuses out into the air in the alveolus, and it's going to be exhaled. Some of that, carbon dioxide that was formed from that, from this slow reaction here at the tissues, we're going to get that moving the other way. So we're going to get free hydrogen binding with bicarbonate anion to form carbonic acid. So therefore changing that ratio between the carbonic acid and the bicarbonate anion. So you're going to get this equation pushed to the left, where you're going to get carbon dioxide and water formed, and that carbon dioxide then leaves the plasma, enters the air in the alveolus, and you exhale that as well. All right, this is the one we're really interested in here. Okay, we've got that bicarbonate anion entering the red cell. That entry of negative charge is going to cause that chloride to move out, okay, in that chloride shift. Inside the red cell, you're going to get this hydrogen ion. So remember, what we have to think about here is that oxygen has come in and it's bound to hemoglobin. Okay, so that hemoglobin that had the hydrogen ion attached to it from what happened up here, the hydrogen ion is going to be released, right? And hemoglobin that has released, this hydrogen ion hemoglobin complex that has released its hydrogen is more likely to pick up oxygen. But that free hydrogen has to go somewhere. Okay, so it binds to this bicarbonate anion. Look, this is just so cool, everybody. So again, if you get more of binding on this side of the equation, you're going to get more carbonic acid. So as everybody's seeing, we're pushing this equation to the left because we've changed again this ratio. So then you're going to get more dissociation of that carbonic acid into carbon dioxide and water. And this is fast because of the involvement of this carbonic anhydrase again. And that carbon dioxide then is going to diffuse into the air in the alveoli and be exhaled. Okay. Also, we've got that carbaminohemoglobin, which also releases its carbon dioxide. And obviously, you know, when the carbaminohemoglobin has released its carbon dioxide, it's going to be more likely to bind oxygen. But here we are more interested in that carbon dioxide then that diffuses into the air in the alveolus and it's exhaled. Now, if you don't find that as fascinating as me, I'm not sure what to think. I think it is just the most elegant, beautiful system in the whole in the body. It's just amazing. So I'm going to let you read in your own time these summaries on this slide and the next slide, because it's literally everything that I spoke about on the previous slide. I'm going to go straight here because we're going to start talking about something called respiratory acidosis and respiratory alkalosis. So we need to do a little bit of revision to begin with. Carbon dioxide, as you know, reacts with water to form carbonic acid. Carbonic acid then dissociates or releases its hydrogen ions and bicarbonate anions. And this is an equilibrium reaction, so it can move in either direction depending on the concentration of reagents at either end of this reaction. Okay, so carbon dioxide combines with water to form carbonic acid, which dissociates to release free hydrogen and bicarbonate anion. That can go the other way. So if the hydrogen and bicarbonate anion bind to form the carbonic acids, it can then dissociate to release carbon dioxide and water. Now, the respiratory system plays a really important role in regulating blood pH, okay? And together with the buffers that respond rapidly to sort of neutralize or dampen pH changes, and the urinary system, which is a little slower to react, but it's very accurate and it allows long-term regulation of pH. And we'll get to that when we get to the urinary system. The respiratory system, which is what we're interested in here, allows a short-term response to acute changes in pH by either increasing our ventilation rate or decreasing our ventilation rate. The more carbon dioxide that is removed, the less carbonic acid we have. Therefore, the ratio of carbonic acid to bicarbonate is changed so that bicarbonate is more likely to bind to hydrogen ion to make carbonic acid. Okay, removing the free hydrogen from the solution will increase the pH and make it less acidic. Is everybody following that? So the more carbon dioxide that is removed from this side of the equation, the more carbonic acid dissociates to replace that carbon dioxide that's lost. Therefore, you're changing the ratio between the carbonic acid and the bicarbonate anion. So more likely then for bicarbonate anion to bind to hydrogen ion to replace that carbonic acid. Okay, and in that way you're removing the free hydrogen from this side of the equation, so it's going to cause pH to be increased. So let's look at this again here. The more carbon dioxide that's removed from the body, the less the carbonic acid. right? So the greater the rate of breathing, the more you're going to remove this carbon dioxide. So you're going to have less carbonic acid because it's going to dissociate to replace that carbon dioxide. Okay. So as I mentioned before, you're changing the ratio of carbonic acid to bicarbonate, so that bicarbonate is more likely to bind to the hydrogen ion to make carbonic acid. And removing this free hydrogen from the solution increases the pH and makes it less acidic. The opposite is also true. Okay, if you have a very slow breathing rate, okay, you're going to get accumulation of carbon dioxide. That carbon dioxide will bind with water to form carbonic acid. Again, the greater or the increased level of carbonic acid here is going to then cause it to dissociate even more, to release more hydrogen ions and more bicarbonate anion. The more hydrogen ion that's released, the more acidic the pH of that solution is going to become. So you're going to get a decrease in the pH of that solution. So this brings me nicely to acidosis, which can be respiratory or can be metabolic. Remember, acidosis is where pH of the blood is abnormally low. So it's below 7.35. Remember, the pH of the blood should be between 7.35 and 7.45, and we usually just take an average of 7.4. Respiratory acidosis can be caused by inadequate ventilation. So let's say you have reduced elimination of carbon dioxide. Let's say you've got uncontrolled asthma, where you're not able to eliminate that carbon dioxide. It is going to cause the pH of the body fluids to become too acidic. So respiratory acidosis is a type of acidosis that's caused by an issue in the respiratory system. Might also be caused by damage to the respiratory center in the brain, right? So let's say you take, I don't know, a heroin overdose or something, and the heroin, affects the respiratory center in the brain to cause a decrease in ventilation rate or breathing rate. That will then allow carbon dioxide to build up to cause respiratory acidosis. Emphysema is another example where, air pools in the lungs. So people have a problem, getting that carbon dioxide out, and therefore respiratory acidosis. Metabolic acidosis, on the other hand, is any other type of acidosis that's caused but not by the respiratory system. So again, though, it does cause a decrease in the pH of the blood. So things that can cause it is diarrhea, so severe vomiting, ingestion of too much aspirin, because aspirin is a weakly acidic drug, untreated diabetes mellitus, so in particular type 1 diabetes mellitus, where there is an accumulation of those ketones that are acidic, and anaerobic respiration as well, due to the production of lactic acid, can make the pH of the blood too low. And this diarrhea here and severe vomiting might, result in the loss of bicarbonate anion, and that can then, cause that acidosis. Alkalosis then is where the pH of the body fluids rise abnormally high to be over 7.45. Can be respiratory, so caused within the respiratory system, or metabolic. With the respiratory, alkalosis can be caused by hyperventilation. So if you're hyperventilating, you're blowing off carbon dioxide too quickly. And that's exactly what we were talking here. Removing the carbon dioxide here will cause more carbonic acid to replace it, and therefore you're going to get more likelihood of bicarbonate binding to hydrogen to replace that carbonic acid. So eventually you have less free hydrogen, and that's going to increase the pH. High altitude, where there's a reduced partial pressure of oxygen, can also cause respiratory alkalosis. Metabolic alkalosis, remember, results from all conditions other than respiratory, but still causing an increase in blood pH. Severe vomiting, so vomiting up, excess hydrogen ions, can cause metabolic alkalosis. Too much aldosterone is another one. and ingestion of substances like bicarbonate of soda, right, which is, an alkali, and that can cause metabolic alkalosis because it's going to increase the blood pH. And finally, everybody, just looking at exercise and respiratory rhythm and debunking a myth where an increase in arterial partial pressure of carbon dioxide, which lowers blood pH, and a decrease in arterial oxygen levels during exercise onset increases the rate and depth of breathing. However, the fact of the matter is that increased respiration during exercise onset is caused by the nervous system. So the descending commands from the motor cortex to the working skeletal muscles are also accompanied by descending commands to the respiratory centers to increase respiration in anticipation of the needs of exercising muscles. And of course, exercises stimulate joint and muscles proprioceptors, so those receptors that are detecting motion, and they send sensory signals to the brainstem respiratory centers to increase respiration. So, in summary, the respiratory centers increase respiration because they've been informed that the muscle will soon move or is actually moving. All right, so we have finished this topic. I hope you found it really, really interesting. When we come back, or when I come back, I'm going to be talking about the urinary system, which happens to be another one of my favorites. So I'll see you all soon.